Chapter 1. Sputnik. Until the evening of the 4th of October 1957, the U.S. President, Dwight D. Eisenhower, was confident that he led the world's greatest nation. In the USA, the early 1950s are known as the Eisenhower years. Many Americans remember these years as a time of wealth and happiness. The USA was the richest nation in the world, and it was growing richer all the time. Almost every American could hope to own a house and a car. As a general, Eisenhower had led U.S. armed forces to victory in the Second World War, and, until that evening in 1957, it seemed that no other nation could threaten the USA. But then some news arrived that shook America's belief in itself. The Russians are in space. The Russians are in space. Until this moment, Americans believed that their nation was the most powerful on Earth. But now the Soviet Union had gone beyond the Earth. Millions of radios all over the world could hear a new broadcast. Beep. 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 This electronic noise was the sound of the satellite Sputnik 1, the first object placed in space by humans. It was a Russian achievement, and it shocked Americans. This was the tune of the Cold War. The Soviet Union was America's great enemy, and soldiers from both sides stood ready to fight in almost every part of the world. The risk of real fighting, a hot war, was always present. But the Cold War was not just about armies and weapons. It was also a war of technology and ideas. Each side presented its successes in science and technology as proof that its political system was better. So when the Soviet Union sent its little silver satellite up into the cold night sky of the Kazakh Republic, it was more than just an interesting scientific test. It was an act that showed the world that the Soviet Union was winning the war of ideas. Sputnik measured just 58 centimeters across. But every 96 minutes it crossed the skies of the USA like a new moon, a Russian moon. Americans were worried. If the Russians could put a satellite into space, what else could they do? Soon they might send platforms into space as well, and drop bombs from them, right into the heart of the nation. Newspapers were soon filled with wild stories about the new dangers in space. Many Americans believed them. What are we going to do about this? President Eisenhower asked his Secretary of Defense, Neil McElroy. There's no real reason to worry, McElroy replied. Sputnik is not a danger for us. Our scientists are better than their scientists. I know that, said the president. That's not what I'm worried about. My problem is that I don't like surprises. I don't want to be surprised like this again. The nation doesn't want to be surprised like this again. In future we will make sure that we are ahead of the Russians in all important technologies. What are you suggesting, Mr. President? We need a new department of government to direct our high technology work. I want to be able to say to the American people, don't worry. The best scientists in the world are working for the US government, and they're keeping us ahead of the Russians. And I want to stop the armed forces competing with each other, the way they do now. It's a waste of money and talent. I want a single organization to control all our high technology efforts. Yes, sir, Mr. President, said McElroy. The Secretary of Defense did not know it, but as he turned and walked out of the famous Oval Office, he was taking the first steps on a road that led to the most important invention of the late 20th century, the Internet.